Hey everyone, welcome back to Security Unscripted. I'm Vincent, and I've been away for far too long. I've been busy being sick, traveling, and just work has been a little bit crazy. So I know it's been 2 months since the last episode, and I'm really happy to be back talking about security in the age of the CRA, especially when it comes to open source developers and maintainers. While I was traveling, I was in Brno, and I was there over the weekend for DevConf while I was there. And I spent some time on the weekend talking to folks about the CRA and thinking about what is it going to take for open source maintainers to adhere to some of the spirit of the CRA. If you're unfamiliar with the CRA, it's the Cyber Resilience Act out of the EU. Initially, it put a lot of burden on open source maintainers and developers. Thankfully, a lot of that has been walked back. That is all good news. But there is the spirit behind the CRA. That's basically the intent is to make it safer for all consumers of open source software and software in general to know that the software that they're using has been developed with some security considerations in mind, and that it's safe or safer for use and for consumption. So as I was thinking about what does this mean for open source developers, particularly as I've been thinking about open source stewardship. So a lot of companies or foundations that have a vested interest in an open source project may be called upon to be a steward for that software. What this means in its totality is, as of yet, still muddy and unknown. There are a few specific things, and there are a few things like where is it going to fit that we're not quite sure yet. But I'm hoping that the answers will become clearer in time. And then, of course, it'll probably just depend on what folks in the EU just say, like, hey, you over there, we think you're a steward for that project. So guess what? Maybe you are. And what do you want to do about it? The answer might be nothing. The answer might be a lot of things. But there is something that can be done by open source developers and maintainers in advance of a foundation that you might be sitting under, or a company that's highly invested in the project, perhaps funding infrastructure or something like that. There are things that open source developers and maintainers can do in advance of that. And that's kind of what I was looking at it from, was like, what can I do as an open source developer in advance of somebody coming to me and saying, like, hey, I need you to do all this stuff and I need you to do it yesterday. What can I do in advance of that? So I spent some time on the weekend kind of just fiddling with one of my two later projects. So I have my Vex server, which is like a demo web interface to basically display Vex files in the web, or the Vex reader, which is the whole parser for reading Vex files and then spitting it out. And incidentally, the Vex server uses the Vex reader to kind of just basically demonstrate that it works. So I took the Vex server first because it's the one I kind of don't care about. It's more or less just for me and just to demonstrate the utility of the Vex reader. And I took it through three things from the OpenSSF. The OpenSSF has their scorecard. They have their best practices badge, and they have the Security Insights spec. The Security Insights spec is probably the least well-known of the three. I'm not quite sure if it's done. It might still be in development. Somebody can correct me if I'm wrong. But it's the documentation was a little hard for me to follow. And so I did it, but probably not to the degree that I probably should have. The scorecard is probably the easiest. You basically set it up as like a GitHub action. It does a bunch of automated checks, and then it complains to you about the security things that you didn't do. That one was pretty straightforward. It didn't take a lot of time at all. This OpenSSF Best Practices is the one that took the most amount of time. And by most, I mean a couple hours. It was not overly difficult. In fact, I think that most of you out there who are more familiar with GitHub, GitHub Actions, GitHub workflows, probably would have an easier time with the best practices survey that you have to fill out than I did. I'm old school. Last time I was doing a lot of contributions to open source was basically using Subversion or CVS. Nobody really uses those very much anymore. Probably a good thing. And these workflows, scorecard best practices and the Security Insights spec, well, not that one as much, but are very GitHub centric. So for my friends at the OpenSSF who may be listening, please continue to do the work for GitLab and some of the other Git hosting solutions. I guess Git is another one. This one I use at home for my own stuff. I'd love to see support for those done up in the best practices and the scorecard as well. But all of that aside, if you're familiar with the GitHub workflows and whatnot, this stuff is probably going to be pretty easy to do. Again, the best practices taking the most amount of time. It will take you through things like the security of the repository. It will take you through test suites, security testing. So think SAST, DAST. Wow, I'm completely drawing a blank on the other one that I was thinking of. Oh, fuzzing. Yes, fuzzing. I'm not a big fan of fuzzing. And it's not really pertinent to my project. So why would I think about it? So the scorecard just basically looks at the repository, right? It's based on things that the repository is configured to do. Scorecard is basically based on some of its like contributors' philosophy. Do developers have secure development knowledge? It is a questionnaire, and you fill those things out. You don't have to be perfect at these things, right? The thing that I actually really liked about the best practices in particular is it was a reminder of good hygiene, right? So you could take a look at some of the things that is asking you, like, do you do this? And there are a couple instances where I was like, oh yeah, that's probably a good idea. Maybe I should start doing that. So I thought it was actually quite helpful. So even though it did take a couple hours of time, not so much for the Vex server. I kind of went through that one because there were a bunch of things that didn't matter, didn't care. Does it need a test suite? No, I don't really care. I'll know if the website works or not. But for the Vex reader, it was probably important. And so it actually made me go back to the test suite that I had written and realize that it was broken. So I fixed it. And then I added some more tests to it. And then I got it to run for every commit in GitHub workflow, which is a good thing, right? So that now whenever I'm doing a new release, I can have the assurances that the things that I want it to pass on those tests are going to pass every single time, every commit. There were a couple other things that it helped me do. Like I'm a single maintainer. I didn't have branch protection. I didn't think I needed branch protection. Probably a good idea to have branch protection. So now my branches are protected. It made me have to change my workflow a little bit, but not too much. And it's probably using a better, more appropriate Git workflow. So these were good things that came out of it. And so at the end of the day, when I look at my Vex reader or my Vex server, the Vex server is, I think, 96% complete on the best practices. The Vex reader, I am very happy to announce, is passing the first level of the best practices. Scorecard scores are like 6.6 or 6.2. They're not amazing, but they're good enough, right? And they basically demonstrate that some of these security things have been done. So when we go back to the CRA and what people are looking at from that, whether I'm a enterprise open source vendor looking at an upstream that I want to use in my software, or I'm Bob and Alice's pizza shop making a web application, looking at what languages and what modules I might be wanting to use for those languages, I can go and look at GitHub and see, are they doing the best practices? Yes or no? What does the scorecard look like? Is this acceptable risk for me? And I think these are good things for open source maintainers and developers to do, particularly given the amount of time involved is relatively small. And this isn't something that you have to do over and over again. As you change things in your project, you may want to change them. With projects that have more maintainers than just one person like myself, it may take a little bit more time, but I actually don't think it'll take that much more time. And I think that these are really good positive steps that anybody can do. I mean, again, if you're looking at the OpenSSF best practices and the scorecard, and you're using GitLab, maybe you can't really use them out of the box yet, but I'm sure the folks at OpenSSF would love the help to get that working if that's kind of the platform that you're using. And we could basically start to build some of this, grassroots open source developers taking on and just basically being transparent about the security and security knowledge of their projects so that their downstream consumers can make better informed decisions. So I think it's actually pretty good. I think it's pretty easy, pretty lightweight. You don't need to be a security guy to answer these questions, frankly. For me, I found they were more about the development of the software and kind of the construct around it, CI/CD pipelines, like I said, branch protection, code scanning, those sorts of things. Don't have to be a security PhD to be able to do that stuff. So I think I'm going to leave it there. Hopefully not take another 2 months to come up with another episode. Hopefully you find this useful and you look at the OpenSSF Scorecard, Best Practices, Security Insights spec, and see how applicable they might be to you and to your open source project. So until next time, have fun playing with this stuff. There's a ton of resources out there, and let's make the world a more secure place. Take care.